We're ready to go. And as per usual, we're starting with introductions. And I'm Fred Miller.
Matt Horton, from the Family Center.
Michael Tesnick, Community Cycling Center.
Rob Sadowski, Transportation Alliance.
Marie Dodds, AAA Oregon, Idaho. Oregon Association.
Mark Lear, Peabody.
Jamie Watts, Peabody.
Kevin Lee, Peabody.
Leslie Warren, Elders in Action.
James Halco, Florida State. Dean Pump, PG.
That comes Oregon on. Georgia Mitchell, Peabody.
Jill Smith, Tom Forward.
Gary Corbin, IES Consultant, Peabody.
And Lisa Curler, Oregon Creeping. Alyssa Hart, Peabody. Terry Williams with Revenue Bureau.
Tom Baldwin with Revenue Bureau.
Ryan Hockley, Commissioner Elder's Office.
Tom Miller, Oregon Opportunity Network.
Jim Sanderson, Oregon Studio.
Chris Kopka, I run the business committee. Craig Rogers, NoStreetFeed.com.
Eric Fritz, NoStreetFeed.com. David Wine, Fulton Public Schools.
Okay, that was good. Got through the first part. That's probably not even the easiest part of the meeting.
Yeah.
And we've got some work to do. And the first thing we're going to get into is summarizing where a couple of the other work groups are. And Ruth, since your company, I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, thanks so much. I've got other folks from the group too, so please chime in, guys. So we've only had a couple of meetings and we've gotten some sort of informal feedback. So I wouldn't say that we have anything set in stone by any means, but the general sense of the strongest kind of agreement or support from our group, I would say, is just around the principle of wanting to use an equity lens in determining new investments in maintenance and safety projects so that underserved population scenarios get the benefits. Definitely wanting a street fee structure that is progressive and minimizes negative impacts both to low-income residents and to nonprofit and public institutions. I think on Fred's list, the principle around ensuring all new revenue is spent on maintenance and safety, there be oversight, people certainly support that. There's, although less strongly, there's also support for the idea of a sunset provision. And opinions, I would say, are mixed about the or not. In terms of the business fee, we really are, at this point, we're leaning toward the business entity-based flat fee, and I think staff has been working on different scenarios. We asked for how that would play out for different types and sizes of different nonprofit organizations, the question of multiple locations and so forth. I know that came up yesterday, and that's something we worked on. As far as we asked specifically around the question of whether nonprofits should be exempt from a business fee as organizations, whether they should pay but at a discounted or sliding scale rate, or whether they should pay the same as businesses. And most, although a few people thought that nonprofits should be exempted, most were saying nonprofits should pay, but at a discounted, some kind of discounted or sliding scale to be determined. I know there's some discussion again yesterday at the business group about that. Certainly, we talked about the distinction between the very small nonprofit on the one hand, up to some of the very large enterprises like your hospitals and so forth. So, totally open to that discussion. We haven't landed on any firm recommendation around that, other than there should be a discount. There should be a discussion about the sliding scale. On the residential side, we had a small work group that met and was really looking just at the mechanism, not at the amounts at this point, and the concern there around any kind of connection with the whole water sewer billing system, just the complexity and the likelihood from housing experts' perspective of multifamily housing, the way the billing works, that just would be too cumbersome for residents, for private, as well as nonprofit landlords and the city to administer. So where that group landed on was that the business, the income tax-based approach would make more sense. Again, not any specific recommendations at this point about amounts or what that progressivity scale should be, but just in terms of the mechanism and making sure the right folks are paying and that it's not too cumbersome. Anyone else from the group want to bring in anything else? And we just appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and there's lots of interest in having discussion and understanding where your group is and how the groups connect and where we can weigh in. Oh, the one last piece that was part of our charge was whether the existing water and sewer discounts should be kind of extended, and the conclusion of our work group was We'd love to talk more about that, but it's a huge, complicated issue not to be folded into this.
Any questions for Ruth? Okay, let me piggyback that and do a rendition of the business work group. There is a remarkable amount of agreement on a bunch of things, not getting down to the finance yet, but I want to talk a little bit about what's there, maybe even some of the things Ruth mentioned. I think generally there's an agreement that the need is there, and I haven't seen a disagreement saying we need to do something in terms of maintenance and safety investments. I think after a couple of briefings, there's general agreement that the PBOT budget doesn't have fat in it. It's not misspending the money, but they do need some additional funding for maintenance and safety. In the business group, there was an early comment that we don't want things too regressive nor progressive in terms of whatever solution is arrived at. There is clear view that we need an oversight committee to make sure that existing funds that are spent for maintenance or continue to be spent for maintenance, and any new funds also go have a side account so we make the new funds go to where it's designed. I think we can tie that into the oversight committee. There's clear view that the city should be in the game somehow. We shouldn't just be looking for residential and business taxes. There should be some effort by the council to find some revenue for transportation. In particular, there's an opportunity in a fall budget adjustment, October 15, where there's been some discussion of getting some transportation revenue at that time. After yesterday's discussion, there was pretty close to 100% agreement that this package should be referred to voters after 6 years. You know, there's been discussion with various people in terms of referrals, but that presumably, if this program is done well enough, the voters would be sympathetic after that time. If it's not, then there's no reason why they support it. In any case, they've got to a 6-year referral. There's a pretty clear view in the business committee that progressive income tax was not the favorite idea. It was a little stronger than that. But basically saying there are business taxes, and then for a lot of people, you turn around and higher incomes, they get taxed once again, and they have trouble supporting any kind of business tax before they knew what was going to be the approach to residential taxation. After looking at the numbers, because as you'll recall, I said, is there a way to get to rather than a $26 million residential contribution and business contribution, if there couldn't be something less, because there's, I think, to get the support from the business end at least, we needed something less. And they said, let's just look at numbers if we cut that in half and have 13. My review of that, and there was no decision by the committee, my review was 13 is a pretty modest ask when you look at the administrative costs and the leakages, and in the sense you don't collect 100% of the tax right away. It was down 13 million, gave something less than 10 million, so it was 9.5. So, and that seemed like a pretty small effort with maintenance and safety needs that are there. So I asked the staff, and again, there hasn't been a decision made, to say what would happen at 20 million, which would net something closer to 16, 17. So just be aware that's there. There is a new fee proposal, a new fee proposal on the table. They got some discussion, but there was lots of, dug into a lot of detail, and I'm going to look for a special session of people who want to get into that detail and spend the time, because it's hard on a committee of 20 plus people to get into the small details, but people need to be comfortable. So in any case, that's going to happen. And I think there's a decent proposal that people find interesting or intriguing that they're working on as a business fee. So having said that, that's where it's going. I want to step back and say, how does this all fit? Presumably, this committee will come up with something that represents a residential proposal. The business committee, if successful, will have this session in the next meeting be able to say, this is the direction we want to go or not. The council will be able to say, and I think I've said, and I think that they will say, that there's a chance of this fall budget adjustment to put some money in. And I think also, if there's a 5-cent gas tax from the state level, We talked about a bonding program, which would address some of the heavier needs beyond just maintenance, but sometimes when things haven't been maintained, it has a reconstruction need. So that would end up being something in the order of 7 to 7.5 million. So if in fact the council said there's about 4.5 million that's equivalent of streetcar operations, it may not be called that, but that's where transportation money is going. But perhaps they could find a $4.5 million contribution, and this 7.5 would be something significant for the city. So there's an effort to get to something like that where both business and residential could support some proposal, the city would be doing something. And then today you're going to see the list of projects, because that's going to be important for both committees. And how will the money be spent? And then there are some various conditions on all of this that we mentioned, like the oversight committee that would be looking at making sure things are spent right. So I think it's a skeleton of a proposal that could work. The council obviously can do what it's going to do. I mean, these are advisory committees, but I think they take this process seriously. So if we can get something for both the business and residential ends and get that together, I think there's a proposal that makes sense. So that's what we're up to, and Deborah has a comment.
I'd just like to offer, I think the perspective on many of the points is pretty close, but I'd like to offer one perspective. First, I don't know that I can describe yesterday's meeting, after yesterday's meeting, that there was really a proposal, or whether there would be a proposal in the sake of a proposal. They know all those details are. There have been so many different funding options that have been presented that I think it's made it difficult for business group to like, oh gee, this might be it, oh gee, that might be it, and maybe sum up all of it. But I think there's been a lot of data, and I think it's, I mean, there's that sweet spot of what's too much and what's too little. So I don't know. I wouldn't qualify as we have a proposal we could all agree with or even consensus.
And I didn't mean to characterize that. I'm saying there's something you're discussing with a lot of detailed questions that there needs to be a side meeting on just to get through that detail. But it is a proposal. It's not a business income tax. It's a fee, and there's some numbers of whatever 65,000 plus people would be paying. So there's something on the table that really has to move forward.
The other is I heard a sunset in the true sense of the sunset. There's a date when this expires, as opposed to a sunset that establishes a mechanism for the advisory committee, or the oversight committee to make a decision on whether or not we take it to the voters or city council just what it's worth. I heard true sunset more than I heard making it an option for that advisory committee to recommend that we go to the voters.
And that's not really clear, because I said it's a 6-year, it's done, the council can refer it.
Sunset is a good.
Right.
The other thing I think it's that the real concern around the charter and the charter describes that there is a fund that is set aside. It's a real strong, especially business group model. And I think yesterday was the first time I heard there was any hope as the city council to enact it if they chose to. If they chose to act on it. Doesn't mean that they won't have to. The legal opinion has to come back with that. So those would be what I would. There's some other business folks in the room.
Okay. And I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, about that's what I was saying, is that oversight committee has to have some language. And frankly, I don't know if that's a charter or an ordinance or legally how you do it. But there's sympathy to have something stated so that existing money continues to be spent on maintenance, and new money will be spent. But there's no longer, at one time, I had some draft language saying the oversight committee could call for sunset. But what we have right now after that meeting was it's over at the end of 6 years. The council could put it on the ballot. People could vote for it. It's over.
I would just draw the distinction between there's the oversight committee, which has been proposed, which I think is important, so that people can have that ongoing insight from non-in-state. Things come up and we need to shift a little bit. And I think that in the committee's mind is separate and language probably similar, but not the same as what was proposed in the charter before, that create a fund that offs that money for maintenance. So I think they're a little bit different. And then I think if later on in the agenda, so we can talk about it more later, but the business work group have a very, very keen interest in the residential funding mechanism, which I don't think I'm not talk about, but because so much business income is taxed on personal income taxes for all pass-through entities, particularly building businesses, that's where their business gets taxed. And so, so it's not as simple as saying businesses residential, especially income taxes. So.
Okay, anything else on that? Let's launch into projects then.
Since I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm reporting on what I heard back was one of the outcomes. I know that you guys had a discussion last time about the week project criteria. And I'm just passing out again the bridge signal and pavement improvement map that we're putting forward as our project list. And what I understand last meeting that really came out is that with the bridge signal and pavement priorities and what we're proposing to fund, we really trust the engineering judgment and the databases and information that we have that helps us develop where to prioritize the right payment improvement at the right time. But what we really want to spend time today is really diving into the safety project list. And we wanted to just put this out there again to let you know that we still haven't gotten the maintenance side. That's still a huge piece of this, but Mark's really going to just dive in. One of the things too that we put up here, this is kind of a rough percentage breakdown, but the way we're starting to look at things is we have our busy street work that we want to do in the residential street work. So there's both maintenance and safety that'll happen on busy streets and maintenance and safety that'll happen on residential streets. You can see the majority of the money from a proposal would go towards the improvements that we want to do on busy streets, and then part of that would be under residential. So there's maintenance, and then we also have kind of this operations category. So some of the things under operations include signals and street signs, that clearing vegetation, in addition to some bigger movements for our big assets. So Mark's going to really dive into some of the projects that around the safety.
Yeah, and I heard last time from this committee that there was some confidence in the engineering judgment on these kinds of projects, that there was a lot more interest in saying what's going to happen on safety, and an overlay related to income and ethnicity and so on.
Did everybody get a copy of this straw man spreadsheet? Apologize for, I think I was able to staple almost every corner. It's just an extra. I wanted just to kind of start with just kind of what's in the spreadsheet, and then I'm going to pop back to this PowerPoint slide as we talked about last time and talk about how we got here, what the goals we're trying to achieve. And I think it'd be useful. I know people are really wanting to see this list, so let me just give you a highlight of what's here, and then I'm going to walk through some PowerPoint slides and a lot of time for conversation. So what you see here is this, again, straw man proposal. We're trying to refine this over the next couple months so we can have a really good list of projects to take out, go out and help involvement with city council to review the proposal. We've broken down, if you looked at the last page, just a second, you can see that there's a summary by these different categories, which I'm talking about in a minute, like crash, crossing, sidewalks. And it highlights, well, how much revenue right now we have in the, or how much expenditures we've identified in the straw man proposal today. And then using a 6-year kind of conservative revenue number of how much safety funding is going to be available, a sense of kind of where we are in those different categories. Some of them have some additional capacity potentially, some of them will overspend. This I'll be walking through this and kind of highlighting some issues on it these PowerPoint slides. So the first slide is basically just giving you a sense of what the goals are of our safety expenditures. We really have three goals. The first one is basic, just reducing deaths and injuries. The second one is this growing awareness that Portlanders have much different access to our transportation system and face different risks based on their income, race, and it's something that we need to pay more attention to how we help with that issue. And then the last one is and this is again a bigger problem in some parts of town than others, but we have people that are just unwilling to take active transportation, walking, biking, taking transit, because of their fear of traffic safety concerns. So what we've done in putting together this project list is really look at some of these unique challenges that we face today. And probably the most urgent one that's really been made clear through a lot of research that's been done is just how this concentration of crashes on our busiest streets. It's what has led us to the High Crash Corridor program. It's partially what led us to have as much interest in the and then the other one is, well, to say this, is the pedestrian crash rate. After years of making some progress on pedestrian crash rate, we've actually seen those numbers go up a little bit. And so those vulnerable users really appear to need some more protection in our city, especially. So the goal then is use these programs to use existing and new tools to address this problem. So this, John asked us to highlight a few, or maybe it was Michael, or others had asked us to bring some maps that kind of highlight some of the equity issues that we're looking at. And these are just two base layers that we've been using, and we're using, I think, all across the region now. We're doing grants. And so this one shows income. And what you can see, I know a lot of you know more about this than I do, but you can see that, that there's a concentration of low income on the east side, spread around, but it is a big issue that we're looking at. And then the other issue is if you look at that another overlay where you look at communities of color and concentrations of communities of color, you see that same pattern really emerging. A lot of people talk about education, other kind of things. This third one is sobering. The Governing magazine that just came out, I encourage people to take a look at it online if you haven't had a chance, did this amazing analysis of 104 cities across the U.S. and looked at what's happening in census tracts that have higher concentration of poverty. And what's happening in most cities is also happening in Portland, which is, or in Multnomah County, which is the death rate. This is these are 5-year averages for pedestrian deaths. If the census tract has less than 15%, the 4.4 deaths, pedestrian deaths. If the poverty rate is greater than 25%, it's 2.3 times that high, at 10.2 deaths. So again, that's a big reason why we're paying attention to this and some good data to So the process for how we selected projects really is built off of all the good community work that's been going on in the city for the last 5 years and longer. Unfortunately, we have these great high crash corridor plans for the 10 high crash corridors that we have. We have safe routes to school plans that have been put together. The East Portland in Motion project has been an essential tool for how we address some of those in East Portland. Pedestrian bike and freight plans also help us with this. And then you can see, and I won't walk through these, but our goal is use those plans to help us identify the best practices, the best way to take. So when we were working on the proposal in May, we had a distribution formula for how we would allocate 2/3 of the money we were prioritizing for busy streets, and the 1/3 of revenue we were prioritizing for residential. And you can see this corresponds exactly to the spreadsheet that you have in front of you. On the busy street side, we're really focused on 3 things. High crash corridors, improvements in those corridors, adding sidewalks, again, also focused on our busiest streets where we have the crash problem. Again, growing awareness and from the public and everybody else that crossing improvements are really important. Where we see most of our fatals are people crossing the street, along the street, and sidewalks are super important. We're trying to dedicate some money for that, as well as a lot of our highest crash locations for bikes are on business. So anything we can do there to minimize that conflict between bikes and walkers is positive. On this local side, we're only 1/3 of the safety money that's being dedicated on residential streets. We're really building off of that good work that's been done at the Safe Routes to School planning level. Now we do think that there's a reason to continue to fund our Neighborhood Greenway program, provides alternatives to riding on a busy street. A lot of connectivity for bikes and walkers. And then this idea, it says here safer shoulders, but there's been a real push from neighborhoods. Southwest has been part of this whole movement as well. But basically, low-cost solutions. We know that there are certain streets that we may, that may not be prioritized for sidewalks in the short term, and are there ways that we can use some funding to help address that, and at the same time make sure that we have funding for the streets that really need to have sidewalks. So this next map, and I should have printed this out. I'll make copies. You guys be able to see this closer scale. But what we did, and we'll get all this up on the internet too, so drill into it more so we can get it up there in 24 hours. But what you'll be able to see is we've overlaid all the projects that are in the strawman proposal on top of the equity map layer that includes the income. So this, I think, will really help as we're out there talking to different neighborhoods and different groups about what we're working on and where the projects are. We'll be able to see that overlaid with this income information. So the next couple slides I'm going to walk through, and I'm almost done, are highlighting some of the key projects that right now are in the strawman proposal that we think are good examples of the kind of work that can come out of this effort. So the first one is project we probably heard us talk about before is this idea of doing safety improvements along 122nd Avenue that will allow TriMet then to come forward and make 122nd line frequent service. So you get that 15-minute headway 7 days a week. What they're doing is, it's a combination of building sidewalks, new and improved crossings. The part that I know, John, you've been interested in is some of the striping and signal changes stuff that we can be doing at the same time to make sure that the transit crew will work efficiently. So we're not talking about spending any our streets money on transit directly, but we are talking about doing some of these other improvements to get to transit. And that, if you look on the list, is showing up right now in high crash corridors under this HCC 12 on the first page, that $8 million improvement following along. The next one, and this is actually spread out through a bunch of these programs, but we have initially put into the strawman proposal the unfunded projects that were identified in these projects. There was a really strong feeling from community members in East Portland and across the city that that project has identified some really high priority improvements. And so we've included right now the sidewalk, improved crossings, and neighborhood included in that East Portland plan. And you'll see those scattered throughout these different categories. We'll clean it up. Right now, the ones that you can see that have these weird codes like G5 and G4 and XO5C, those are all projects that you'll see by the part of town. Those are projects that were coded like that in the ETIM document, so we'll clean that up. There's a bunch of those projects. In addition to that, we've included right now, and these numbers can move around, but we've included $10 million for Capital Highway as part of in order to try to move that project forward. A lot of you know it's a $19 million project, last estimate. There's SDC money we could put against it in addition to the $10 million, and there's active conversations right now with DES. There's a lot of good work from Southwest and others to help us see if there's ways we can bring down the cost. That's the other thing that's happening as we're getting these projects on the list, is we're also trying to figure out how do we minimize the cost so we can do more projects. Another piece of this that's probably new to a lot of you is that we've identified, this is an area that still needs a lot more work, I think, but we've identified under protected bike routes, and some of these show up as neighborhood greenway routes as well, but some placeholders for some of these safer bike facilities we've talked about. So if you look on page 3 of the spreadsheet, you'd see that there's, right now we've dedicated these placeholders to find these numbers. But $3 million for North Northeast Broadway. Right now, a lot of you know our highest concentration of crashes inside the downtown is on that section of Broadway coming into town. There's a lot of good work that's been happening in the community and others working on it to see what we can do farther out, farther to the east from that corridor as well. We think it makes sense to put some money against that. In addition to that, there's an active project going on right now, it's just about to be kicked off with the downtown interest, business community, and others, to look at how we integrate bikes into the downtown. And so there's a placeholder of $3 million to be able to let that project, figuring that out, be able to develop some of those projects as well. I think on some of these, we may want that kind of flexibility. In addition to that, there's a existing system development charge project that does the Flanders Neighborhood Greenway and Crossing improvement that is getting a lot of feedback from staff that that's a project, especially with the SBC funds there, and it's a pretty cost-effective way to make a connection to get off of the business street. The next piece that we cover is starting to get a little bit into some of the projects that we show on the local street side. Again, the main one we're highlighting there is the Safe Routes to School program. Just a couple facts, hopefully you guys have heard this before, but since 2006, we've increased walking and biking program by 35%. The other places in the country that have the kinds of numbers. In addition to that, we've gotten to the point now with our schools that we're providing safe routes services in to having 44% of the kids play that. It's a really successful program. It's a really good way to get education out to kids and families about safety at school anymore. And so that's a big part of what you see in this proposal. If you looked at that on page 3 under safe routes, what you see right now is we are saying that there could be $24 million available for this citywide for 6 years. That could change again based on funding. Okay. And then you'll see that we've allocated that money out to high school clusters. Our Safe Routes to School team has set up a really nice decision-making resource allocation formula that looks at each of those high school clusters and looks at issues like crashes, how complete the network is, number of kids on free and reduced lunch. Other issues like that is a way of being able to say, here's how we can allocate money to best address the needs that are on. That's why the dollars kind of change by high school cluster. The money will be spent at the elementary school level. And between now and the next time we meet, we're going to start coming up with those long lists of projects that would fit under each one of those high school clusters. It's going to be hard to put it in something like a spreadsheet like this because a lot of those improvements that are identified at schools end up being fairly small. There's a corner that's too wide and people are taking it too fast, for example. Smaller improvements. There's a lot of that shows up. In addition to that, our Neighborhood Greenway program, hopefully most of you have heard of it, but this is basically one of our most cost-effective programs to get people safely around the city, walking and biking, where we develop parallel local streets, especially business street, and make really safe crossings in those streets. And it's a very cost-effective way for us to develop this network. Since 2009, increased the number of court meters a half mile from 25 to 60%. You see in the Neighborhood Greenway section, on page 3, an example of a number of Neighborhood Greenway projects that are currently on the table. The ones that are costed out are the ones that were unfunded in E10, and then there's some ones that say TBD that were in process of cost. A couple last slides. This one that I mentioned before, I do think that there's some really positive things happening on some of the shoulder work that's happening in Southwest neighborhood. There's no way diminishes the need to do full-on sidewalk projects on the streets. But I think there is a partnership opportunity in talking to BES. They're doing more of this work, and this is something we're up to of stretching their dollars and doing more on some of these. Probably not going to be. In addition to that, I just wanted to highlight this last slide, but that we have been digging deeper on these opportunities to stretch our street dollars, or safety dollars, with projects that are currently in the system development charge list. These are the projects, a couple of those I've already mentioned, that right now staff are saying are the most promising and have good matches for a little bit of our street money to go a long way. One that I haven't talked about, but something I've really about more, is there's a project which traditionally defined as a freight project, 27 intersection improvements, but also has some nice safety elements and headlight connections as well. And I've also included Southwest Garden Home project for a really long time, and again from our SDC staff. What's that? Yeah, really long time. And when staff looked at the list and said the projects kind of were boiling up to the top, this was one of the ones that they felt like to the group. So that's it in a nutshell. Let me just describe kind of where we're going.
What would you like the committee to do?
Yeah, I think. Oh, good.
What's your expectation as far as the safety in the
Yeah, I think it would be good to get some feedback around, our next steps are going to be taking this list out. It's already been up on the web. But taking the project list with maps out to a whole bunch of different groups. Order walks with your committees, and just a whole bunch of different groups of access. So what we'd like from you is give us some feedback. Do you think that the materials we put together, some of the maps and the other kind of things are helpful, or the things you'd like us to stress more? What we'd like to have is sort of a consensus from this group that we're ready to go out and have this broader conversation. We also are going to be putting together some simpler materials to help with that communication over the next couple of weeks, that we'll also be able to go out and have that conversation. Our hope is that we have something that really works so that you can invite us out to meetings that you're having, and we can provide sort of the same pitch and help people understand what really the value is in moving forward part of the project. Is that
I have a question, just a clarifying question on the list here. The high crash corridors, HCC 11, they're not partnerships now?
Yeah. Yeah, so right now, probably the main thing that it's referring to is there's a lot of interest in seeing safety projects move forward on power and building the power plant. At the same and so I know the commissioner has had a lot of interest in making sure that we keep this on the table. We want to be really aggressive. We're growth, that's growth too, but it's trying to get our regional partners to make it possible. But I think there's a sense that if we're successful with that, there's going to be some act requirements. And so having some money available for that, really no other money that we have to do that would be smart. I think the other thing is that there are other state facilities out there that have a lot of interest from neighbors as well. And so it's just allowing us to be, having it happen more and more often. That we're applying for grants for state funding only if we can come up with the local level. So it's basically addressing that on those high crash borders.
I think that was $16 million bill, the whole out of pocket substation. And so, is there been any conversation with the citizen committee on the septic plan about what this might find?
There's been a lot of conversations, about how do we position that project in the legislature to get funding and move forward. There's been probably less about that next hard part, which is if that happens, then where's the national going? And so I think this is, we won't know that, unfortunately, at the time by November, whether or not the state's going to fund this. It's fairly, if you look at other projects like this, other places, Seattle did this. They identified a couple what they called mega projects, where they wanted to have some match set aside, just to make sure that if they were successful with the strategies, we could have it. Does that help?
It does, yeah.
Broad theme in the
on the first question might not be as perhaps would a non
I think that's a good conversation for this group to have. Let me clarify one thing. We clustered we made clusters by high school boundary just to sort of simplify things into groups. The focus still, we'd love to do safe routes. But yeah. No, I hear you. But either way, right now this is really focused on building out this element, not making that. But that said, your other question about is this money available for non-infrastructure? The history of our state process school program has been that we've spent most of the money on infrastructure, but we've been smart in using some of the money to make sure that we are educating kids and making kids safe. And I'm in agreement that we should continue to be open to having that kind of conversation. I think as we spell this out in more detail, that onus would be on the city to kind of try to describe that more detail in the line.
There's a lot of money in all of these categories, even more than you have enlisted in this whole. Is this any priority order amongst within the categories and stuff? Is there a list that would say you're inside the building here? In terms of paying for the buck, there's another way that would be. Is this prioritized? Is there another way that if you had to cut some of these categories?
It's not prioritized within the it is, there has been a lot of work at the staff level and feedback we've done in the community, right, to identify the highest priority projects in this short list. But you're right, that's going to be a big, that's going to be one of the bigger challenges, especially what we're talking about right now, I think, having a 6-year, use one idea, having a 6-year project that sunsets after 6 years with 3 years of defined projects right out of the gate, and then you have a second 3 years of defined project, and wouldn't have exactly what they are to do something. And so the numbers that we've identified right now are within the range of revenue that would be available at $20 million proposal, $26 million proposal. And so But I actually went, when I was in the I went and took some Ken's new numbers and actually took it down a little bit farther. So I was using more the numbers that 35 to $38 million of total revenue, which again, because of the numbers we're talking about. I think you're right. This list is going to get cut down to about half of what it is now. If that was the first page. And back to your other question about sort of the and an engineer just kind of make a decision to say which of these projects. I think there's some stuff that we can do on that for sure. I mean, if we look at, and that's probably what's going to happen with this list, is if we look at like the sidewalk list, and look at the crossing improvement list, there's things we can do like what are the projects that we know the most people using the facility, risks are the greatest. It's that same kind of analysis that we do to coming up with these projects in the first place. But it's I guess last thought on it is I think the science, we haven't done traffic safety stuff, is as good as the science on paving in a lot of ways, and we should trust a lot of the engineers and sort of process around it. That said, there get to be a lot of projects that kind of get clustered together. And you know, crossing improvement on a 4-lane facility near a bus stop, you can move it around in a bunch of different places, sort of provides a 40% reduction in crashes. But it's, you know, it's hard to say, you know, exactly this project.
Oh, sure. You had that statistic up there about since 2006. So that was some real measure. Was the only I'm just curious if there are other ways to measure this.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice suggestion. We've done another presentation, something we walked through these different categories. So, for example, we could say like crossing improvements. Here's a picture of one. There's just a median island. Here's a picture of it. Costs this much money, and you get 40% safety benefit. And then we can do a similar kind of thing with sidewalks. And some of those categories for sure. You were talking about the schools. Yeah, it's good or bad. The Safe Routes to School program comes with federal funds that have tons of reporting requirements. I think most of the way that it's done is with surveys to go home with parents and like that. They are doing some other kinds of things. Now there's no survey. Actually, from my perspective, it's a blessing. Some of those requirements are not state federal funds. Give you a lot.
Great.
I'm gonna make sure I understand your spreadsheet here. So you've got a cost estimate and a 6-year summary balance. And you said that you're basing this on 6 years of paying $1 million a year, and that's how you got to The corporate application,
Sure.
honestly, box on the last page, so I can better understand
Yeah.
what you're targeting, because I totally agree with Dean that I'm worried about overcommitting.
Yeah.
And I really need to talk to people.
Yeah.
So that we understand the numbers.
Yeah, so if I did the math right, the so sit, I use 17,600,000 as the annual amount of revenue that would be available for safety. So that's it, you know, we use those numbers, that's assuming like $35 million total revenue is about 50/50 in safety. For those sort of numbers. And again, we have this other issue that we have to sort of be thinking about on the revenue side. And, you know, we do a lot of proposals that have criminal compliance. A couple years in, we get to like 85% sort of ramping up. But I thought that number was reasonably in the ballpark with the conversations we're having right now. And again, that's also if we were going to program 6 years worth of work. And right now, we're kind of in this. I think the current, we give you feedback to people, though. We're sort of saying we'll lock in the first 3 years, and they say, here's our recommendation for the last 3 years. We want the oversight to making decisions for the 6 years today. But that's, but I guess the other thing I add to that, Mary, would be, I totally agree with you that that's one of the most productive conversations we can have with the public and find this list is to say, here's how we prioritize, especially stuff that's within its own neighborhood where you can do that, right? And then we're going to have that conversation with a lot on the income side. This is just my opinion. Other people differently. But I think right now with all the UCAN unfunded stuff that's on the list, there's probably a few of those projects that would get bumped into the second year. But it would be really useful to have EPAM or EPAM support the neighbors, help us make sure that we figure that out. And they've given us this information we have. There's a lot of that. You know, you've given us some information maybe as well. Some of that we've included some of it. But I agree with you. It's a huge task. Or it will be a big part of what we're focusing on. I think what will make it real for people is to start to say, you got to draw this line somewhere for the 3 years worth of work the next 2 years.
Okay, but we did discuss things and ask feedback. We can incorporate it with this and the last.
Yeah, I added a few things. Like there was that conversation about like barber and whether that was covered by a grant. See in there I say language West Side by a grant. So we're doing something.
Anyway, we can talk about that later, but it seems to me we need to have better concrete about what we want.
And
the priorities.
yeah, and it'd be really useful, and if this works for people, to start testing this for it would be really useful, I think, for me, for Jamie, is to have you guys invite us out to transportation committee, any other staff meeting, board meeting, whatever it is, where we can come out and help tell the story with you together.
Okay, so back to my question. I don't know what are your expectations. I don't know this 3 years ago, what you were thinking you were going to get on a project and what you got and how that fits. So one more new standard on this contract.
Hi. I was just kind of following up. I'm going to try and understand this correctly. You've got cost estimate for the project, and then sort of a number that's your best guess at, if we did $70 million for the safety project.
Right.
You kind of hit around this mark, and in the end, if we did this list of projects, we would be $3.4 million something. Is that what you think?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, signalization projects can benefit. And so I'm just thinking, so are there other PC ones?
Signal new condition. So what we're talking about is maybe adding some of the key.
You should, the other one that Jamie's been pushing on is when we divide them into groups, I think it's smart ways to talk about it. So what do you see on business and part of this, like exactly what you're saying, you should be talking about the signal, most signals are going to be. And so when you're talking about all people here is this, like, I mean this, all I work is having on business signal work, able work, and these practical a lot of good things that are great as well. We really want to try to have it be not safety and maintenance conversation, but all the stuff in the industry, all the stuff.
You have a question on coming on the project specifically, but more on the sunset piece. I don't know if that's what
Yeah, well, let's take Vinny, I want him to get into, I mean, you've got for financing, about a half hour ago, so we're gonna get to that, but I got to.
Okay. I mean, I apologize for walking through the trades, if perhaps I missed something that we didn't, I understand come out of the business with closures for 7 years. I mean, the evolution of this conversation, the discussion is very clear in the sense that initially, right at the beginning, personally, there's been a lot of pressure from constituents to get a sunset in the initial proposal. And we've only dealing with the mayor and the commissioner where they can, and didn't really feel that the rationale for not putting it in was strong and yet nevertheless it didn't meet demand. And then, in the context of the city council initial hearing, the ramp up in terms of implementation kind of got stretched out. And so I don't know if that's still on the table in terms of this thing is passed, and it's going to take 3 years to ramp up for the full amount of fee or tax. And so we were talking about a 10-year sunset. And now we seem to have some momentum kind of out of nowhere for a 6-year sunset. I actually think it's probably support for the idea of a sunset. I don't know how much, but I'm still considering this ramp up because it takes 3 years to get up to the full funding amount. We're already halfway through the thing. We're just not going to have enough bills to show people that it's actually a true concept of shadow.
I think the discussion I'm part of, that has been explicit. To start the clock. It takes about a year, I think, to get things administrated and get ready to implement. To start the clock and it's actually implemented, right?
Well, there were some friendly amendments at the city council that ended up carrying the day, in which it wasn't just a matter of taking a year to implement it, it was actually a scaled up.
6, 9, 12.
Yeah. A phased in.
6, 9, and 12. Yeah.
And so we wouldn't get. And I think this was some of the new. And we could say that.
Well, okay.
I just think there's a tension point there.
I'd say simply in the business committee was pretty close to unanimous. So, is that?
It doesn't say anything.
The ramp up hasn't, we haven't, I don't think that we're talking about ramping up.
But I think we'll hear something of that. Well, let me
I'm sorry, just one other question really helped me out a lot, Mark. It's a really nice. But if you give me some context, if I came up with $110 million, hypothetically.
Out of here.
Right, yeah. And we did all these projects. You know, how are we looking? You know, is there another list just as big that still needs to be done, or are we didn't have a chance to sit back and go, oh, this is good. I don't know. Give me some context for how far this is.
I think, a couple of thoughts. I mean, I think one thing that it really does is really helps large parts of the city, East Portland, but get level the playing field as far as just having a transportation system closer. Moving in that direction. Well, I think that's. I guess the second thing that I would actually do is there's you have some really successful periods with the best states in the country for reducing fate across the board. And we've really flattened out to a large degree, and we've just gotten more and more, at least in my time, approach that we've been as far as having discretionary revenue. So I think it's super significant that way. I don't want to act like in the same way that massive agencies safety 3 years from now we'll be done with it. I think that there's substantial safety improvements in their parts of town that we're fixing part of the broken system, but there is a big need out there on the safety side. I think it maybe goes back to what I've been talking a lot about. If the public sees the benefits and you can demonstrate the benefits, then hopefully there's this value exchange that's out there that can exist for a really long time. And unfortunately, it needs to, if you look at the kind of potential safety improvements that we can make, especially if you agree with the concept. It's going to be a long term.
Okay, so we got 2 more. I'm trying to say, then I want to sort of wrap this piece up.
I think if you guys can provide some information on the context question on the road improvement side as well, you know,
Sure.
that big firm, so
Yeah.
how much has been there for the
Right.
but under, you know, the order of magnitude that we're talking now, do we make improvement? Do we just not get worse? What's happening to the condition of the road out there? And that's the issue that I've been having with it. As those projects get exponentially more expensive over time,
Yeah.
you know, where we're focusing the money that we are developing now and trying to get out of that hole so that we have more money open up down for more.
Okay, let's get that. I mean, you're asking for the
Yeah.
product.
Okay, great. Really good point.
Okay, so I'm here. That you've got. Feel free to email any comments you have on the project presentation. But I'm hearing that you've got stuff down and take out to the public, and different groups are get invited, and you'll air it. But I don't know what the committee's expectation is. If you thought you were going to name 38 projects, or if you're going to get seeing what you just saw. My sense is you've done what you're supposed to be doing on projects. You can now make comments, and you'll now make.
Like at our next meeting, I think that's exactly right. So we managing your expectations. Feedback from the at our next meeting, we would come back and we would say, here's the feedback that we've done both internally and externally, and here's how we've modified the list. In addition to that, this is going to be hard, we're also going to have to come in and start, I think at the next meeting, and start to say, here would be a recommendation for the first 3 years, and here's the recommendation for the stuff that gets bumped in the second 3 years. And that's when you flip. That'd be harder, but that would be the hope at that next meeting is that we can just continue to refine. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we had talked last time, as long as I've been around, we had some discussion of a progressive income tax, it had some negative reactions to it, we had some user fees, and Karen said something new on basically user fees that I think was sort of interesting.
So there's a two-pager coming around their numbers, which one and two. First page is represents $20 million gross revenue example, and the second page is $15 million. But for the purpose of the conversation, I'll just be speaking to page one, and then forward revenue. And so, it's pretty similar to the chart we've shown before. There's three different versions on this, two different proposals on here, and their numbers. The first one is the transportation user fee based on the water billing system. And so this was what we were kind of coming back with, something that is a little bit more progressive. We think we did that a little bit, and I'll explain that in a minute. But that's our progressive proposal, I guess, on the water bill. The two is the progressive income tax. The feedback last time that was progressive. We do a little something to kind of flatten it out a bit. So what we ended up doing is we did flatten it out a little bit, and we also had it. And then the third one, which I'll have to walk you through some detail, is you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little rate table there. It's actually kind of like the first category, zero. There's a zero fee for $15,000. So let me just start off with the first scenario here. There was not many changes we could really do with this. The one thing that we did add, and you'll see it at the $40,000 income level, is that we did add a 30% discount to between 60 to 80% from that cost. And so you can see at the $20 million level, the actual single-family household fee is $90 down. And then it goes down to 686. And then if you are between 30% and 60% MFI, you're at $4.90. And if you're below 30% MFI, it's $15,000 mark. And then you can see proportionately on the second column over there on the multifamily side, you can see there's and these adjustments here, will tally up to $20 million. Any questions on the first one? The second proposal here is with the income tax. So one change that we made here is given the rate table on the right there, this marginal tax rate. Basically, what we took was the federal, the 2013 federal marginal tax rate schedule for the filers, and so we used that as the basis build the rate schedule, and then we proportionately adjusted the rates to get $27. And so as you can see the progressivity of the tax, and then once you hit, it's not shown here, but I do have it in the notes there. Letter C. Basically, the adjusted gross income was about $850K. So someone earning at $850,000 will actually get this tax over on the tax $150. And then what happens there is when we cap it, we're going to do some revenue top end and so forth. That is the adjustment of the portion that they. So that's kind of what we're kind of looking at as far as a progressive income tax. A little bit flatter than before, and it doesn't get so high at the top end. So that's something kind of we can discuss. Get into it. And then the last one is back to number 3, the far right column. So basically what we did is if you look at the table again on the far right, bottom right, if you are 80% MFI down to 30% MFI, you're going to be paying a flat fee.
$4. And then of course 30% and apply and below zero. And then if we're in 40,000 to 100,000 in gross income, it'd be $8 plus fee, and to double up on the $4. And then we go up again from 100,000 to 200,000 to $250,000, $12. And then anything greater than $250,000,
And that's a month equivalent of the annual collection.
correct. And because these are progressive income tax, you will see at the top there, it's monthly equivalent, with income tax regulation, that's annual, and as well as the flat fee, and we're going to flat fee, but we're going to be, we would issue this on the income tax platform. And, I guess the three, why we like this proposal is that, we think there's like three benefits to this. One is that, as far as the administration goes, we feel like, and the Revenue Bureau has to kind of validate this question in the next couple of days, but I feel like this might be a lower cost option from the administrative perspective than using the liability system. And we have an estimate on it. So we think it's going to be lower. The second one is there's the whole concept of under the water billing system, we weren't able to get discounts to those people that really need them in multi-family units. So low income group has taken a look at it, and it's pretty challenging in this price to issue discounts maybe to the landlord of these multi-family units and then have them push it to what we think this one does is because it's on an income tax-based platform, we're able to capture, we're able to give the lower rates people that actually should get it. So, this is more direct way to get to qualify. And then the last one is, from a practice perspective, it's kind of consistent with what we're doing structurally with the business entity platform. And so it's just a platform on both ends and we have four categories. So structurally speaking, not to fit in that.
If you don't.
I'm just curious, on the business community, you went from using the meters of the property to the business. Did that happen?
Yeah, a small bit. So basically, there's about, in the Multnomah County, numbers that we got, about 339,000 pilots for 2012, and equipment population percentage of about 18%. So that gets us down to about 271,000 pilots versus about 200. Or actually, that's not it. 240,000 units.
And I know you feel free to roll over all of them, but I'm surprised that you added almost 100 to the base.
No, we added, no, this is actually about 207. After we had a normal number of 389,000, and then after we get part of normal, then we get about 207. So we added roughly.
Just want to hear a little bit more about the exception of the new option with your flat fee, where it came from. I know at the last nonprofit low income advisory committee, we weren't considering this as a on the table. We thought of the smaller ones that had a chance to do it.
Yeah, part of it was the feedback we received last night, actually. So we were discussing how do we make this, package of proposals that would be feasible for everybody. That's hopefully both the recidivity of the original proposed, and also enough that we can generate with all, plus keeping in mind such. So basically, it was just something that we were successful with the flat fee. It seems that to a good degree.
We got a proposal from the business work group to mock up a flat fee. I just want
Not specifically, it's just a conversation that led us to brainstorm that.
Board.
So the first one where we took 30% MFI and lower, and we just exempted that. And then what we did for the second layer there is, anything that was 80% MFI to 30% MFI, that's what we had. And that's what we see for all. And so everyone that's 80% MFI
adjusted by household size.
Yes, that's right.
What's the next thing?
And then, right? Oh, so 50% roughly for households of I think there's some number out there that's 0.3 persons per household, and so when we looked up the MFI schedule for a household of 2 people, it's roughly 50,000. 2% MFI.
The 40,000 to 100,000 next year is roughly 80% of the MFI to well,
I'm sorry, I'm not
I
sure. So you're saying,
I'm just going to keep going.
well,
with the
how
tier
did we scale up,
Yeah.
basically? Basically, it was it was actually just a natural grouping that we just thought $100,000 was a natural grouping for 40,000, 100,000. So, this, particular example, we can adjust the categorization. But for the purpose of this discussion, this is kind of how we so there was no, we thought it might be a logical reason, categorization, grouping the 40,000.
To understand one quick thing about where this comes from. This, I think part of the feedback that I heard last night. Business workers, the large agreement with the business ending flat fee was sort of flattened a little bit how much anything. So micro businesses pay a quarter of what they use. Small businesses pay half. Right? That it's within a pretty, fairly tight range. So I think some of that feedback we were getting from business community, especially the income taxes, well, now you're starting to get into a much bigger range. And on the higher end, you're collecting a lot more revenue, not kind of in that same proportionality. So part of what we were looking at was, well, can you keep that same kind of proportionality between charging the lowest income, highest income, and still generate as much revenue to have something that was maybe more politically viable. Still, met a lot of ways, progressive.
I think there's a lot of compelling reasons to consider it, and looking forward to the income would actually do an achievement of this.
Yeah.
I think my only instinct is that the economies within a business context and the resident, local residential context are very different, right? And so even a small business owner, even one who is just making margins, is still likely to be much better off than somebody who is, at 30% below the limit. So, applying the same theory of proportionality to the residential side just may be over there. That's something I think we're going to talk about.
Well, I first want to say that I think that it's presumptions. I think it's progressive always. I start from the point I still haven't gone off music. One of the income is I think it's much improved than what I saw there. And for the income tax system, everybody uses the system. And I like the way that this is set up as recognizing it as a user fee system. And so I think that's the right way to go. I actually kind of like that. I don't think it's too burdensome for anybody. Like I say again, it's a user fee. Everybody uses the system. Then all the candidates are running for the mayor and the city council. I think this was really more campaign. They were all told at the doorstep that one of their highest priorities from every part of the city was that they wanted to see improvements in the and I think that reflects what everybody expects. Because when we make $500,000, sure they can afford it. They don't necessarily have to system. So I just want to emphasize that the user fee.
So you wouldn't then go for the platform, you would want the user fee, which is on the left side.
I think the user fee is okay. I think that's fine, but I want both.
But that's not a user fee. Huh? The flat fee is not a user fee.
You could argue this, man. It's a user fee. It's like $4 for somebody.
What's the user fee based on? But I will say this, $48 for somebody that it's a lot more than $48.
One question I think you started to touch on the cost of with the we've had that soon and really what we're looking for is not very interested in actual dollar amounts, but more interested in difference in cost.
Sure. Yeah, so we have some of it already, and we want to kind of do the due diligence to kind of wrap it up nicely. But we are looking at that to show you here's our growth revenue, here's what we think our compliance is, what we're correct, what's the leakages, and then what are administrative costs.
That's really interesting because people may find that some of these are extremely expensive than others, and that's money which you put in the street rather than into the tax. So I'm very, very interested in knowing that that's tough to come up with. And then, just a comment on because I've done this several times. I think that put in perspective, costing and things, and I think I'm really sensitive to the impact on low income. For the early ones saying, look, the proposal is completely aggressive, not started at all. That said, I have a 2002 Toyota. It's been long paid off. You know, I'm not paying in enough. Fortunately, I'm not paying anything on it. But in just what I spend on my old Coupe Tacoma, for gas, insurance, repairs, comes out to about $9. The average vehicle, the average person in Oregon, is about $18.89. Average. Obviously, some are quite higher. I'm really low at $9. So even that really, really low one, $9 a day. You know, what we're talking about here is, you know, at $8 on the $8 a month, that's 27 cents. So right now I'm paying over $9 a day for my car, and I'm paying about 50 cents a day, something like that, on the street. And this would add another, you know, let's say let's call it 27 cents a day. I'm still well below a buck to pay for the street system, sidewalks, and everything, and $9 for my food. So just in perspective, it's not bad.
Given the time, even a couple of comments. We are going to invite the business committee to talk about the key proposal that we are between now and the next meeting. And I think it's the same information that we do next week to get back in on these alternatives and if there's one you're looking at like. We need to get a sense of that. I want to step back and the council have talked about a meeting in November to approve whatever they're going to approve. If we're going to have meaningful advice to these couple of committees, September is a pretty good time to say this is a good direction. Something's got to be worked out through October. If they make a decision in November, which I would anticipate, it takes about a year, I think, to get us administrative question. I think there's some good reason to start something if we get it done by January 1, 2016. That's useful. The longer we put that off, the more difficult. So I know that the council would like to do something. We can get our 2 bits in, you should collectively, so that we have something that is considered good advice for us. Because I know they want to do something with it. But I think that may take some interim work here. We got some strong feelings about data here, or projects. Projects obviously going to go out process. But here I think we've got to respect what people want. And we've made some progress, but I think we ought to, over this next couple of weeks, really, as many as we can. So, yeah. I don't know what they're going to do in November. If we don't get recommendations out of the committee, the politicians do what they do.
Are you suggesting that the 2016 might be taxed based on your 2016 income? Or I mean, that's, yeah.
It's not necessarily up to the voters. I mean, it's an unfold. If the council has something to get referred, they could choose to refer it. Or they could pass it, and we're saying if they did, it's what we on the business side, that it's over in 6 years and it has to go back to the voters.
I mean, I think there is a political reality of because I think you don't want to, muddy the waters, but there's if it's a system that we all agree to enjoy, I think we need to make some adjustments and deal with some of those and we don't really do that. But the computer system is play our part in it. And just on the, I agree, I still think that the problematic is a lot of investigators, not simply that it captures high wealth individuals that may be in business, it's that it captures in a very real way, and you heard a lot of it, very small businesses, micro businesses that are operating in South City, who pay their business taxes through their personal income. And so, they'll pay the city's business license fee, and then they'll get hit again, potentially, in addition to paying the business value. So it's not just that it gets those wealthy people that we want, but really does double dip for small neighborhood businesses that are fascinating. I think this, yeah,
I just, so I do think, I kind of share the concern. I'd really like to see how the business side can go. Some kind of still kind of like trying to sort the two out and see how they match together. That said, I mean, I get the logic of this user fee, the all-use system. The logic is sound, it's true. But we've already gone to that proposal once, and it didn't go over too well, as you might recall. And so I think I like to see a change, and maybe it's a 4-tier fee, but I think that more think about that more. But I think there's some middle ground. That's just like Michael, I bet.
Thank you. Terry, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to make sure that folks knew that, like, on the business side, the fee or the tax that is mentioned, that is a deduction.
Yeah. I'd like to see numbers on that too, if we could. I mean, I keep hearing that. It's great to see how many people are affected.
Okay, so please get comments in. By next meeting, I'd like to say this is what we heard, what we got, as close as you can come to the proposal.
Yeah.